Welcome to another episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. I'm John Chen, your host. And if you're watching here on social media, hey, do me a favor, subscribe, share, like, and comment. I'm only 50 people away from having 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So go to YouTube and go subscribe and ring the bell for me. And you too could be like the 1,000th person who is subscribed to my channel. Hey, if you want all the episodes, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online. You can see all the episodes, and a brand new episode releases every Wednesday of every week of every year forever, people. And if you want to learn how to be more engaging in the world, come online, get your phone out, scan this QR code, get a free ticket, or of course, come in here and get one of our amazing VIP paid tickets. Here, October 20 through the 22nd, every attendee is going to get a 5-minute 4K 4-camera video. So if you are a speaker and you're looking for video, this is going to be one of your best deals of the year. Speaking of the best deals, I've gotten a chance to know this person through Bobby, or Black-Owned Business Excellence. Jenna Finesse introduced me to her, and here's some amazing facts about her. She's a podcast strategist, educator, and the founder of Plan to Podcast. I think I'm going to learn something during this part. She was born in a military family and lived in Germany, Deutschland. Fun fact, I've had 3 years of Germany. I know about this much German. She also builds systems and communities and live experiences like podcast, pals, and creator activations that turn content into real business opportunities. Let's introduce the one and only DaniMarie.
Hello to the world across the internet. How are you? Thank you, John, for having me. I love the energy that you always bring.
Thank you, DaniMarie.
Yes.
Right, it's one of the things around podcasts, right? Every podcast has a vibe. What is that vibe? And so, in your first 60 seconds of whatever podcast is, you usually get a sense of who they are or what they are. Is that true for you, DaniMarie?
Absolutely. And then if you are really good at what you do, where you are going to be leaning more into like you have to kind of carry the conversation, you kind of get that right away versus if you kind of get a chance to kind of pull back because the person is pretty well versed and they know their stuff. So you kind of pick up on those cues if you're really good at what you do, probably within those first 60 seconds, to your point, John.
Well, speaking of your first 60 seconds, why don't we do this? A few of my friends don't know you yet, DaniMarie. So that's what we're going to do. Take this moment now to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do in the world.
Yes. So I am DaniMarie, podcast strategist. Like John said, I am born and raised here in Washington State, the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Two beautiful boys that I had later in life. So I was busy during the pandemic. I'll leave that to you guys to know what I'm talking about. And over the pandemic, I was basically thrusted into podcasting in a time where everybody was kind of up in arms and the world was chaotic. I leaned into podcasting because it was a safe space. So the OG podcast I started with my mom, the mother and daughter duo podcast, is currently no more, but I found my way now coaching and teaching through podcasting how to launch, start, grow, monetize all of the cool things with your podcast. And we also have another podcast called Host City Hustle, teaching you about the business of sports. So that is me in a nutshell.
Oh, genius, DaniMarie. So what was that Genesis moment, right? Was it COVID? Was it maybe George Floyd? Was it something else that happened around that period of time that said, I got to get my voice out there?
Yeah, it was all of those things coming out ahead, right? So first time mom, mid 30s, mother, living with my mother, which that's a whole nother conversation. Um, my father, unfortunately, not to put a damper on the moment, passing away. The pandemic, losing both of my jobs when I came from a background of working multiple jobs all of the time. So I was like, I need to talk about all of this. Where do I go to like feel all of the feels? It happened to be my podcast. And so
Hmm.
becoming a first time mom, I said, Mom, you and I have to talk. We're going to put this on the mic in front of the camera, talk about some of the stuff that you and I went through that we never discussed. And that was the birth of the Mother and Daughter Duo podcast, AKA MAD. And we talked about a lot of interesting topics, if you can believe it or not. And yeah, all of those things coming out ahead. I found my voice through podcasting. And I like to say podcasting is both art and healing.
Oh, why do you say that? Say more.
Well, because it is very therapeutic. I mean, there's two types of podcasters, people who take it very seriously, and then people who like to use it more for all of the virality. But those people that are professional podcasters, they understand that they're changing lives every time they're behind the mic in front of the camera, know the impacts that they're imparting and the responsibility that comes with that. So I lean more on that side of things as a professional podcaster. And I think professional just means you put the full production together. It doesn't necessarily mean you have the clout and the notoriety and your celebrity status. That makes you a professional. So, because of that, I take my responsibility in my platform very serious. And I know that every time I speak, I try to speak with intention because I know people are clinging to my words. So, for that reason, I think it's very therapeutic. And then we talked about mental health, childhood
Yeah.
trauma, generational curses, stigmas that single people face on that mother and daughter duo podcast. And there were a lot of people who came to us and said, I would never be able to talk about these things with my mom. Thank you for starting the podcast.
That's what I was going to ask about, right? What's a moment that you and your mom had in podcasting, and whether it was between the two of you or it was, a listener who came in and gave you a comment? I'm just trying to curious, like, how'd you know you were on the right track?
Well, two things. I will say when we did premiere our podcast, we actually premiered at a movie theater. So we rented out a movie theater. We had the
Oh,
full red carpet. And that was a time that was very intimate for our audience who came up to us and said, wow, could never have this conversation. So we debriefed after and we got a lot of great feedback. But I mean, just going over some of the titles. Um, the abuse that could go on in a Black family household that
yeah.
goes untalked about or undiscussed.
Mm.
Stuff that I've never been able to get closure on, that my mom was able to provide closure um, with the podcast. So being in front of a camera, you're very vulnerable, you're very wide open, and you cannot control what you say in the moment. We didn't do editing. I know you know the thing about that. So it was just very raw and very transparent. And I won't go into detail because we don't want to make it a somber moment, but it was a lot of trauma that was unearthed during the conversations that we had.
So, as a professional speaker, we look at all these things. Like a podcaster, again, you're using your voice, right, to really make change. And vulnerability and authenticity are very high on the list now, right? People want less and less of like polished, right, like perfect speakers, and they want more of this. They want this authenticity. They want this vulnerability. And I don't know. Is that what you saw with your audience, or what feedback did you receive from your audience?
Yeah, and I've done since that podcast, Mother and Daughter Duo podcast,
Yeah.
we've done probably 9 different shows, and I've
Mm.
settled on the Plant of podcast. So I've had a lot of feedback. But the vulnerability and transparency, like, yeah, you're not supposed to talk about what happens in the home. I keep wanting to say the Black family household, and I'm going to say the Black family household. We brush it under the rug. We don't
Yeah.
talk about it. What stays in our home stays in our home. So just that alone, talking about sexual trauma, mental health, and all of those things was very jarring for some people, like, whoa, this is a lot. And then other people are like, wow, I love that you're so free to talk about this. So, my mother's good friend, shout out to Miss Robin, she
Mm.
came up and said, I was raised where you don't talk about these things with your mother. I dare not ever speak negatively about the things that have happened in my home, but
Mm.
I just appreciate and applaud you, young lady, for just being so vocal and putting your mom to the task to talk about these important things. And yeah, those were some of the things that we got, just showing up and being authentic and raw and at liberty to do that, when everybody is so hush hush.
In Asian culture, right, we have a lot of that too. For instance, mental health is like, just get over it, right? That is not the right solution.
Right.
But that's often what happens. Again, Asian culture families have similar similar type of challenges around that. I'm just curious around for you, where's the bravery come from in being able to talk about it? Like, was it you just had to get over it and say like, I got to get this out, or was it something else that said this has to get out to the world?
I've always been a vocal person. I don't know if it's the Taurus in me, but I'm like, there's no person that can put me in a heaven or a hell. God is my judge. That's kind of what I live by.
Hmm.
So I've just always been very vocal. Like, what are you gonna do? Who's gonna check me, boo, in the words of Sheree from the Real Housewives franchise. But I've always been like that, no matter who has anything to say against what I have to say, it's like my truth, and I stand on that 10 toes down. And I think that goes a lot to the authentic piece that you talked about.
Yeah.
Just being bold and outspoken has always been a part of my nature.
Okay, so you've probably listened to lots of other podcasts and you have your own. What do you think has to happen for you and your guest or your mom or whoever to be engaging to your listeners? What do you think are some of the things? Like you did say vulnerability. I'm just curious if there are any other things that you have learned over your podcasting years or that you recommend to other people that you teach.
Yeah, being engaging. So that authentic piece, yes.
Hmm.
You bring great energy. I think that's a lot to do with why people are so engrossed in engaging with what you do. You put on a good production, you have the nice background, you have the great energy, including people into the conversation. So when you have people who are watching you live, making sure you're interacting with them, giving them shout outs, having fun games that keep people
Cool.
engaged.
What kind of
In
games?
this
What kind of games did you use? I'm
in this
curious
type
now.
of environment, polls, like if you are using Zoom, there's a
Yes.
feature with polls and
Yes.
surveys and all of those things to keep it fun. Whiteboard features. Um, for me, I use a lot of tools like AI to help me keep it engaging. So like Lovable is really great. I've created a few games using Lovable, so like a nice Jeopardy or something, to keep people both engaged and provide education at the same time. But I think those are probably my go-tos. So nice aesthetics, great energy, useful tools, and just showing up authentically keeps it pretty engaging.
I want to go back to your rent a movie theater. Can I ask what year was it? When did you rent that movie theater?
Yeah, not long ago. So I started my podcast journey back in 2020, 2021. So it was around that time. And it was if you guys are in the Tacoma area or Seattle area, it was the Grand Cinema in downtown Tacoma.
Oh, very
So it's
nice.
a private kind of
Yeah.
locally owned cinema.
So, Danny Marie, one of the trends that's actually just emerging now, I'm just telling you that you're way ahead, is podcasting during a conference,
Hmm.
right? So that what happens is they bring the podcast, but they bring it on stage as a segment of a conference. And they're gaining a lot of success around it because it's doing something different than a fireside chat and it's doing something different than a keynote. Have you seen this trend, or why do you think this
Oh,
trend is
yeah,
just emerging now?
absolutely. Well, I liken it to just like a music artist doing a concert. To me, it's very
Mhm.
similar. You see a lot of podcasters who are now going on tour and
Yeah,
doing their live shows.
yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I liken it to. And I think it's popular because there's obviously a ton of ways to monetize your platform, that being one of them. And that engagement piece, right? You find out who is actually your avid supporters and where are they located, and then you make that one of your first stops on your quote unquote podcast tour.
Hmm.
And so I just think that it's another way to touch the people, right? Going back to that key word, authenticity. People want to see you in person and not just on a computer all of the time. And that's another fun way to keep people engaged and keep your avid supporters sticking around, is to show up and shake hands with them. Let them know you appreciate their support by doing a live podcast show. So the monetization piece, and then just keeping people engaged and following you on your podcast journey, is why I think it's very smart to do a podcast live show.
Okay, what are some of your besides your own, right? What are some of your favorite podcasts?
Hmm. So I actually like Emma Gree, the Aspire podcast, and I think she's only been doing that for maybe a year. So if you don't know, Emma Gree is responsible for Good American Genes, Skims. So she's partnered with the Kardashians to run these very successful businesses. She's also been featured on the Shark Tank once or twice before. I also love Jay Shetty, of course. He stays in that number one spot. I love Earn Your Leisure. So they're really big on culture, finance, politics, investing, business. And I think those are my top. Some of the other ones you probably wouldn't know. I try to support a lot of my podcast community. So they're not as widespread as the ones that I mentioned, but I do try to support my group of people as well.
And look at this branding, right?
Yes, Emma. She's doing her book tour. She just had Kamora Lee Simmons this week, and I think the week before that she had Cardi B.
Oh, right here,
And
Cardi
yes,
B.
she
Yeah.
had that's the young lady who owned Mayel. So I forget her name. I think I forget her name, but she was in a white suit. But yeah, Emma Grede is a powerhouse in her own right, and those were all great podcast episodes. And right now, it's just a panel full of women, so girl power. But she has had men on the podcast as well. So just know that, okay, you guys, give her a chance and make sure you go watch because great, 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 great platform.
Wow. I have not listened to her podcast, and I'm going to put this on my list.
Oh
I think that's fun.
yeah, I'm noticing that if she's really there's a lot of women in the past couple of weeks, which I haven't noticed, but Steve Stout was one of my favorites in terms of the gentleman that she's had on the podcast. Will Packer.
Genius, genius. All right,
Hmm.
so obviously that's one of the other ways too. Get a big guest,
That's
right?
right. That's
What,
right.
what do you think is the biggest guest that you've ever gotten? Like, I had a friend who was like stalking. He was in the early podcast days, or just recording interview day, and you could get interviews with the people if you had like that's why he would hang out and stalk like the lobby of like where they were speaking at, and he was able to get some pretty big name podcasts. So I'm just curious if you have any other big name podcasts that you've done, anybody you're
Mm-mm.
proud of, people should
No, I mean
know.
I'm proud of everyone, but no, I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
had. I've never had the thought to go and ask anyone big for my platform. So it's always been about the people, always community
Yeah.
oriented.
Yeah.
And it's always just been about giving other people a platform, especially because I teach podcasting. So it's more so connecting with other podcasters. Maybe somewhere in the near future, we're doing a activation in Atlanta this month. So the Black Effect Podcast Network, and
Ooh.
I'll be shaking hands with Charlemagne the God. If you don't know, he's now on Netflix. So that's another cool thing about podcasting. The doors and the opportunities are fully open. So
Hmm.
maybe I'll ask him if he'll oblige and be on the podcast.
Well, I hope to be responsible for that.
Yeah, you put the battery in my back.
What was the one I actually? Here's a great story, right? And I'm going to lead into. I want to hear a great story from you about podcasting. But one time I won this. This is called a certified speaking professional. There's only 700 in the world, and that means I get access to the green room during this big conference that we have every year. And I go to the back, and I put a clean shirt there. So I go to the back to go change into a clean shirt to receive this award. In who's there? Les Brown.
Oh,
Les
wow.
Brown, and nobody's around him. He's not being swarmed at this moment because it's backstage. So I sit down and introduce myself, and I'm like, Les, hey, can I give you a book? Because I've been a fan of his since the '80s, right? So I've
Yeah.
been listening to Les. He's OG, and I gave him a book. He goes, I would love a book. And then like not 3 minutes later, Les comes in there and he goes, turn on your camera, John. And I'm like, what? He goes, turn on your camera. I'm like, okay. I turn on my camera. He starts recording, and he proceeds to give me a perfect 67-second testimonial.
Wow, that is so neat. You know what? A lot of people I have podcasted and interviewed with, they have told me that Les Brown has been a part of their journey. I think Les
Yeah.
Brown is just so, with how big he is, he's still very humble and approachable and accessible, and he's still doing the work.
I can confirm that because again, he was keynote at the National Speakers Association conference, and I posted about this that I met him backstage, and my one of my friends who's on the board with me goes, How the hell did you do this?" And I said, "I just here's what happened to me." And I said, "You know what? Just stick around the lobby, but if you do see him, just go up and say hi." And not the
Mm-hmm.
next day he texted me and he goes, Les passed me by and I said hi. And he sat down for 2.5 hours with him and like just schooled him for two
Wow.
and a half hours. Les does not have to do this.
He doesn't, but you know what? I think Les understands that legacy piece because I think he's
Yes.
now even put his son on, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so the more you can impart wisdom and connect with people and touch the people, that just speaks more to your legacy. You know,
Yes.
your name is being mentioned in rooms you're not even a part of because of how humble you are and how connected to the people that you are. So they'll continue that forward even when you're no longer here. So yeah, I think that just speaks to who he is as a person.
And talk about how it works. It's actually funny. He shared with me one of the facts. He has more organic searches for Les Brown than Tony Robbins does.
See?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins too, but it was very
They're
funny
both
that
great,
they're
right?
both great. Yeah, they're both great and
I
so
always
forth as
open
well.
YouTube and Tony Robbins is always on my feed doing something new with an ad or something. But they're both good in their own right, both powerhouses, both so integral to the culture, especially as you and I are podcasters
Yeah.
and live streamers and
Yep.
do our own thing, touching the people. So those are both models that we look to.
Speaking of which, coming up too, he has a free AI summit coming up right now. So if you are
Hmm.
not on it, go
You're
get on
talking
it.
about Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
right?
Tony
Yeah.
Robbins has an AI summit.
With the, I don't know the gentleman that he seemed to have partnered with, but it's like a smaller guy with glasses. Do you know who that is?
Dean Graciosi.
Okay, Dean. Okay, I have to
Yeah.
look into Dean. I don't know his history, but I'm sure if those two are
He's
aligned, he's another
he's he's
powerhouse.
he's been around. And then also the women MC. There's a women MC who starts and end the program who I've also met in the real world, and so
Hmm.
she's also on that list. You want to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, can I flip this and ask you a question?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Go.
So you are very well connected too when it comes to, is there anyone that you kind of model after or any person's journey that you have followed? And it seems like you're going to the right places to connect. So just where do you do your research and how do you kind of stay connected?
Yeah, in the early stage, again, this is where I did follow Tony Robbins, so I've been through a number of his programs, and then I've been asked to be at his programs. I've actually delivered programs to his that gigantic virtual studio. I've actually been on one of those screens as the presenter. So yeah, so I stay connected to that. But the other place right now is really as I've been. This is my 8th year with National Speakers Association, and DaniMarie, if you haven't checked it out, you got to go to blacknsa.com. Right,
Okay.
go to blacknsa.com. What happened was is that for a period of time there were no black professional speakers that were in this association, and because it's like 50 years old. But about 10 years ago or more, they started having more and more. Like Les was one of the early pioneers in that. He was a member, or he's still a member, and they a group formed Black NSA, which is now its own virtual chapter, meaning that you can join that instead of a local like we. I'm president for NSA Northwest here in Seattle, but Black NSA has their own virtual chapter, its own virtual board, all its virtual speakers, and I got to tell you, you got to follow many of them because
Hmm.
many of those speakers now have achieved things like this called CSP, the Hall of Fame, but most importantly, they have figured out how to monetize, right, what they think and say and do. So
Hmm.
that's like podcasters. Many of them do have a podcast too to go check out. And so I do believe, and for me, I am actually the founder of the Asian Pacific Islander NSA or National Speakers Association, and I am attempting to model what they did. I would love to see that we have our own virtual chapter, right, at some point in the future. And so that's one of the goals that I have on my list.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I hear you say get in the right rooms. That's one of the lives I did this past week. Just and there's actually an acronym for room that I won't go into. But getting in the right rooms, getting in the right rooms. There's so many people who just don't even know the rooms that are out there. So you have to
Right.
do your own due diligence. But getting in the right rooms can unlock so many opportunities for you.
Yeah, here, I'm going to ask you about a room in a second, right? So I got in one of the right rooms where I had a failed marketing. Well, I had a year that was slightly down, so I put a marketing
Okay.
project. I sent 100 packages out, and I didn't get any business from it. But I did get
Ooh.
one phone call. I know it's hard. I got one phone call though from one guy who says, "I got your package," and I said it reminded me. I would like to invite you to a room. And so do you know who Jay Abraham is?
No. Who's
Jay
Jay
Abraham
Abraham?
was Jay Abraham has been a marketing consultant to um oh come on Damon John, right? Damon
Okay.
John, Tony Robbins, and one other person. So he's a top marketing consultant. He's been around, and so I knew this because he's been on Tony's stage. He speaks often there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I get a free seat. I'm gonna go fly to LA and go get there. So I get inside of there, and they have this great presentation, and the video doesn't work. Now, DaniMarie, one of my specialties, of course, is AV. So I asked, I said, could I get up there and see if I can get your video to work? I really want to see it. And I fixed it in less than 2 minutes. And now, DaniMarie, I am the producer for this mastermind. It has 65 business owners who are clocking $10 million in revenue or more and has access to some of the top speakers. And that's one of the ways to get in the room. And so my question
Mm.
is you, what's a room that you've been in that that you're impressed that you're in?
You know what? Again, going back to the community piece, I haven't put myself out there. I mean, I've been aligned with some big names and such, but that doesn't it hasn't moved me. I will say though, like Bobby,
Yeah,
Bobby is one of the rooms that I've been paying attention to before I decided to speak up and volunteer my services. And then just being connected to Bobby, now I have other people who have reached out and want to work with me, and I'm doing the things with the conferences and stuff. So I kind of play it moderately for the most part.
yeah,
And that just kind of does my heart well because just helping people that not everybody knows, but letting them know they also deserve a space, a voice, and a platform. That's kind of where I get the most gratification. But it reminds me, your story reminds me of someone that I follow, Nikki Saunders. She's
hmm,
big on AI. Um, Her start was she started in the military, but after retiring, she said that Eric Thomas, and I know that your audience probably knows who that is, another public speaker. She was going to a lot of his events and doing all of the things and just attending and following everywhere. But she made herself, yes, that's right. She made herself available because something similar happened to Eric Thomas. They needed somebody to do the content. So she was just always willing to be a person of service. I think that's what I connect and resonate a lot with. Just being a person of service is what gets people through the door, not always wanting to take, but give. And now she's been catapulted, and that's what opened her second career is just working with Eric Thomas and doing a lot of stuff for free before she ever got a big opportunity and landed with them full time. So your story reminds me a lot of that. Just an act of service can go a long way, and then going in the right rooms to get access to the people that you want to connect with. Where do you guys see yourself?
yeah.
And then start reverse engineering from there. I want to be on this big mega platform, so I need to go to this event where these people are, right? And then make yourself available, not always asking for a signature or autograph or something, but serving people.
Yeah, one of the things is like getting access to the room, and if the room doesn't give you access or the room doesn't exist, for me, you got to go make a
Mhm.
room.
Make your own room.
And so that's what I've done. Like when I talk about that engaging retreat, this is my seventh year of doing the engaging retreat. And now it's become a room. So we went hybrid. It was all virtual when it started, right? Because it was really around my book, Engaging Virtual Meetings. But we brought many of the top speakers, people who gave me ideas for the book. We put them on stage in the first year, all right? And that was great. And so that's what's happened over the years. And then we've now gone hybrid, and the hybrid now just gives a completely different angle. It's kind of a in this small event too. There are a number of meeting professionals who are saying, smaller events are actually more powerful than big events because everyone really gets to know each other. So this event is not more than 100 people right now. And then we have a virtual audience where over 200 people or more log in and watch this, from virtual. In addition to the virtual audience, kind of like in podcasting, is the gateway to that in-person part, right? Once they get to know you on a podcast or something else, they're much more likely to say, I want to go see, said person or DaniMarie in person. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I think
Agreed.
that at some point you got to make a room. I'll be curious, when you every time you make a podcast, do you feel like you're making a room or a platform or a table for people to really be able to listen to that point of view?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah, make your own rooms. There's been so many spaces where, especially speaking to persons of color, where we probably feel marginalized. And so I'm making a space for like the underdogs for the most part, or
Yeah.
indie podcasters who see themselves in the future, but they're not quite yet there. So we're kind of helping put the pieces together and making people feel affirmed. Even when we do our podcast meetups, we have an open affirmation and a closing affirmation,
Mm.
and people feel like there's a part of something bigger than them. And so that's so key, creating the room, especially for marginalized communities or people who feel like they don't have a voice or don't have a platform, and
Yeah.
just affirming those people. So yeah, every Saturday we have a virtual meetup, and then
Hmm.
now this will be our first in-person meetup. And so we're kind of going after that hybrid approach too.
Oh, I'll be curious to see what happens with that. All right,
Hmm.
let's talk about this then. What do you think is the future of podcasting? What do you want to see in podcasting a decade or more from now?
There's so many people starting podcasts. So there's like 4 million plus people or podcasts that are out there, but only like a fraction of those people are actually actively podcasting. So there's 4 million who have started, but
Hmm.
about 400,000 who are active. And I do think that that still makes for a saturated market, but there's nobody like you. You are uniquely you. But in terms of what the future holds, you're going to see more AI podcasters coming out. I
Mm.
think you're going to start to see a shift in more. So, right now, we're in a situation where miniseries and all of those things are extremely popular, right? So,
Yeah.
mini dramas, you're going to start to see probably that come out of podcasting. You're starting to see more platforms like Netflix that are prioritizing podcasters. You're starting to see more corporations create more studios. So, Amazon, Walmart, they're all building out real estate and content studios for podcasting. So, that's basically where we are at. AI, and then corporations who are now getting into podcasting. And then you see more platforms that are also leaning into podcasting as well. So then how do you stand out as a podcaster? You have to start doing better, right? You have to put forth more effort. You have to think about things as a full production, and
Yeah.
then spin-offs like micro dramas, and finding a way to merge all of those things.
I like this, podcast, a live idea. I got to try that. I'm going to decide. It gave me an idea during this conversation. I'm going to a big conference and it would be really cool to run a live podcast there. They're all professional speakers too. So like we're not have any lack of talent or people who will
Right.
be there. This is like some
Totally.
stats on my own podcast too. Like it took me probably 18 months to get to my first 1,000, but I just looked here and now it took me only another 4 months to get to another 1,000. And so one of the other things people need to know about a podcast is that if you're consistent about it, you'll continually grow, and eventually you may
Mhm.
hit upon something, right, that will allow you to grow exponentially at some point.
Let's highlight that too. So 18 months just before you saw the break, right? 18
Yes.
months. And then after that is when you started to see an influx and a shift.
Yeah.
So then also be okay with having to do the work and put in 18 months of work before you see immediate results. A lot of people want to see results quickly, right? But that's not always the case. Do the work, and then
Yes.
at some point it will transcend.
And then then you get data too, right, DaniMarie? Like you can see the data, and there are certain podcasts that get way more attention than other podcasts, and all you need is one. To be honest, that's my YouTube channel. I have one video that's 80% of the views, and it's not the video
Mm-hmm.
you think it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Evergreen content. So sometimes you
Mm.
just never know when that one video is going to take off. Just stay consistent.
Okay, speaking of takeoff, this is my new segment that I have on this podcast. This is called the Speed Round. While I've been interviewing you, I've been writing questions that have come up during this part, and your job is to answer them as fast as possible if you're okay, and then I will play some ridiculous sound like Mario Brothers. Okay? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, best podcast for you.
The best one? Earn Your Leisure podcast.
Best podcast moment for yourself.
The one that I had with my mother talking about something that gave us closure.
Aww. Wow. Best podcast healing moment. Might have been the same one.
Yes, I would say so.
Best thing you said on air.
The best thing I said on air. Oof. It is I, DaniMarie, and welcome to my podcast.
Wait. Come on. Let's go. Most authentic podcast moment.
Most authentic podcast moment. You know what? I had a guy who basically came out on my podcast
Wow.
who had been living a double life.
Wow. That's big.
It was big. It was big for him. He was
Wow.
much older in age too. So I think that just talks to how people feel in my presence, and then the importance of just feeling free to talk and be yourself.
You know, I got to share it because I was actually at a program in Dallas, and I give this exercise: tell a challenging childhood story. You're right, and everyone goes in pairs and tells this story, and I do it right way later in the program so that people already feel comfortable with each other. She came out and she goes, "This is a story I've never told anywhere," and she talked about how her family escaped, right, from I think it was an African country to come to America. And they actually got stopped by guards and almost got imprisoned, but they made it to America. And I'm like, the first question is, well, the first observation was, that's an amazing story. That's a keynote story. And she's never told anyone. And the second one was like, how did you get past the guards? And she goes, her dad gave an ornamental rifle, right? It was like inscripted or had gold or silver on it, and gave it to the rebels, and they let them pass. And I was like, well, look at the irony, right? The irony that a weapon of war gave you freedom.
Wow,
When it was,
that is powerful.
I just thought it was really powerful story.
I interviewed someone else, Jose. Shout out to him. He's also very big, just with his story, similar story. He came out of captivity and has been on a journey talking about that story. But yeah, crazy.
Stories, yeah, stories.
Yeah.
Okay, what's a wish for 2026?
A wish for 2026 is to see more podcast peeps join our community.
Here, watch this one. That's a Lamborghini. Okay, and the last question is, if you could get people to remember one thing from this podcast, DaniMarie, what would be that one thing?
Be authentic 100% of the time.
Genius. DaniMarie, thank you for spending time here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast, and I look forward to seeing you in Seattle. Hopefully one day you'll invite me to video your live podcast. I would be open to doing that. All right?
Sounds like a plan, John. That's genius.
Genius. Thank you again, DaniMarie. All right, we've been chatting here with DaniMarie as a podcast expert, and she says, what are you going to do to be authentic today? And when might you be, what's a moment that you could be a little more vulnerable to someone that's important to you, like your mom or like somebody else? You don't need a podcast to do it, but it is one way that you can. Speaking of which, there we go. If you're watching here on social media, come subscribe, share, like, and comment. Again, if you might subscribe here on YouTube, you might be number 1,000. Number 1,000, if I can identify who you are, you're going to get something special. If you want to see all the podcasts here, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online. Be one of more than the 4,500 listeners that we have here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. A new episode releases every Wednesday. And hopefully DaniMarie is going to be on my stage. We've got to find out here at the Engaging Retreat in Seattle and online anywhere. Get your phone out, scan this QR code. It will be October 20, 21, 22, and it is amazing. And most of all, if you want to be like DaniMarie, go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, select interview, and you too could be the next person interviewed here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. We'll see you next time.
Don't we start people and keep old people? Show you got heart.